This is True News, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us God. I'm Rick Wiles. The political fallout from President Joe Biden's 2-hour press conference yesterday has world leaders shaking their heads in disbelief and U.S. Democrats in depression, thinking about the 2022 midterm elections. Nowhere to be found in defense of Joe Biden are the far-left propagandists in the American news media who viciously attacked and smeared President Donald Trump for 4 years to tear down the Trump presidency so that Joe Biden could be elected while sitting in his Delaware basement. Doc Burkhart took a close look today at the Biden press conference and has assembled a selection of video clips for you and me to see and hear. Doc, I actually have seen nothing of it. I've read some headlines, but I've seen no video from the press conference. What I've read has been devastating.
And that pretty much describes it, Rick. It was pretty much a train wreck, and a lot of people are responding that way to it. Of course, a lot of damage control is being done today by the Biden White House. They even trotted out Vice President Harris to speak for Joe Biden earlier today, and that didn't turn out so well either. But we'll talk a little bit about that.
They've got 3 more years to prop this guy up.
So the biggest story to come out of it at the press conference is Joe Biden predicting that Russia will invade Ukraine, and he had an expectation of that. So President Joe Biden predicted Wednesday that Russia will invade Ukraine, just as the United States launched a fresh effort to resolve the standoff, and Moscow continued to mass troops on its neighbor's doorstep. This is NBC's wording, not ours. My guess is he will move in. He has to do something, said Biden during the news conference, marking his first year in office, referring to President Vladimir Putin and the Ukraine. Biden said that Putin will be held accountable and has never seen sanctions like the one I promised will be imposed if Russia makes further moves against Ukraine. He added the U.S. would increase its troop levels in the region, including in Poland, keeping with obligations under the NATO treaty. But Biden appeared to hedge his threats, distinguishing between a minor incursion and a full-blown attack. And this is his quote, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and we end up having to fight about what to do and not to do. That is the phrase that has kind of set off worldwide discussion overnight and throughout the day today. What do you mean by that, President Biden? Are you saying it's okay for Russia to go into Ukraine? If it's a minor incursion, you do nothing. So it set off really a domino effect from responses in NATO to responses in the Ukraine.
Yeah, President Zelensky of Ukraine responded very forcefully, saying, "We're not going to accept any incursions into our country."
Right.
So he was rattled because he's been part of the propaganda against Russia. This offensive that's been underway for many, many months. Russia's going to invade Ukraine, and now he's staring Russian tanks down the barrel, and the guy who claims to have his back, Joe Biden, isn't quite sure what he's going to do.
That's right.
And so now the Ukrainians are wondering, how did we get ourselves in this mess? Well, you allowed the globalists to use you as pawns to start a war. We've got a video clip of Joe Biden making these statements yesterday.
And so I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades. And it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having to fight about what to do and not do, et cetera. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border, it is going to be a disaster for Russia if they further invade Ukraine, and that our allies and partners are ready to impose severe cost and significant harm on Russia and the Russian economy. And, we're going to fortify our NATO allies. I told them on the eastern flank, if in fact he does invade, I've already shipped over $600 million worth of sophisticated equipment, defensive equipment, to the Ukrainians. The cost of going into Ukraine in terms of physical loss of life for the Russians, they'll be able to prevail over time, but it's going to be heavy. It's going to be real. It's going to be consequential. In addition to that, Putin has a stark choice. He either de-escalation or diplomacy, confrontation of the consequences.
A couple things to bring out of that, of course. You didn't also hear the comment about we've already shipped $600 million worth of weapons to Ukraine. So now we're telling Russia, by the way, we've sent nearly $1 billion of
we don't know what you're upset about.
Yeah, we don't know what's the deal. And but of course, at the beginning of the clip, we saw where he opened the door in that, well, it depends on the kind of incursion that Russia makes. If it's just a little incursion, maybe we'll just do something little. If it's a major invasion, well, there's going to be heavy losses for the Russians. Well, that minor incursion issue has prompted, as we mentioned earlier, responses from President Zelensky in Ukraine, from other NATO leaders. And so the Biden White House, they were trying to recapture the momentum of their conversation. Jerusalem Post making it clear, okay, this is an article came out early this morning as they're rolling out the media machine. The U.S. will respond if Russia moves any military forces across Ukraine border. So they had to make that clear.
Was that President Biden who said that today?
Well, this is, I like to call her Peppermint Patty, Jen Psaki making these statements. But
and who does Peppermint work for?
Charlie Brown and Joe Biden. So they made it clear. So this is a statement to Jerusalem Post. If any Russian military forces move across Ukraine's border, they'll be met with a swift, severe, and united response from the U.S. and its allies. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said in a statement Wednesday. She also said Russian aggression short of military action, including cyber attacks and paramilitary tactics, will be met with a decisive, reciprocal, and united response. Now, she actually made these response, Rick, just minutes, really, just about an hour and a half after Joe Biden made his remarks.
Okay, so now she is the press secretary for Joe Biden, for the President of the United States.
Yes.
So are we supposed to believe that within an hour after the press conference, Joe Biden's mind kicked into high gear and he became coherent and he wrote down the statement and said, get out there in front of the cameras and you say, I said this?
No, I think what actually happens, he went off script initially and said something off the cuff, and then they had to walk it back.
Who's they?
Whoever they are at the White House. And so the words that Joe Biden, Grandpa Joe, is supposed to say.
Are you saying, Doc, that they, whoever they are in charge of the country, not Joe Biden?
It's what it appears to be. Jen Psaki just Joe Biden made his remarks at 4:45 yesterday afternoon. By 6:30, Jen Psaki had this statement from the White House, and notice it came from Jen Psaki. Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
It didn't come from didn't come from Joe Biden or anything saying I need to clarify my remarks or anything. So this is about 6:30 yesterday evening. So President Biden has been clear with the Russian president. If any Russian military forces move across the Ukrainian border, that's a renewed invasion. Okay, so but that isn't what President Biden said. He had different levels of qualification about what a Russian incursion would look like. And so they've been walking this story back all day long today. But
the main thing that I see, Doc, is he's not in control of the White House.
It doesn't appear to be, Rick.
But we saw the same pattern under Donald Trump. Donald Trump was not out of his mind. He was in full control of his mental faculties.
Right.
But the president would say one thing, and his subordinates would undermine him.
Yes. So Jen Psaki last night had to come out and correct the president.
So the question is, who are these they that are in power, regardless of who's in the Oval Office? There are faces to they. Donald Trump would say, we're going to remove our troops from Syria. They would say, we're not.
Yes.
Donald Trump would say, we're going to put troops in the street to defend the Capitol from anarchists. They would say, no, you're not.
Joe Biden would say, if it's a minor incursion, we'll respond in a minor way. But they said any incursion.
So who are they? Who's the shadow force? Who's the shadow government that controls every president regardless of party?
Right.
Because there is a shadow government that rules Washington, D.C. What's the next clip we've got
Well, a
here?
couple other clips. He goes on to say what the price is going to be. I guess he was staying on script at this point, saying that the Russians will pay a very heavy price. And he goes into detail about what that price may look like. Let's watch this.
Militarily, they have overwhelming superiority as it relates to Ukraine. But they'll pay a stiff price immediately, near term, medium term, and long term if they do it.
What he didn't clarify, though, was what that price would look like. Now, he did hint around that if there was something that the Russians did, that sanctions might be an option. So we have President Biden responding on that aspect of things. Let's watch this.
Top foreign policy advisors have warned that Russia is now ready to attack Ukraine, but there's still little unity among European allies about what a package of sanctions against Moscow would look like. If the U.S. and NATO aren't willing to put troops on the line to defend Ukraine and American allies can't agree on a sanctions package, hasn't the U.S. and the West lost nearly all of its leverage over Vladimir Putin? And given how ineffective sanctions have been in deterring Putin in the past, why should the threat of new sanctions give him pause?
Well, because he's never seen sanctions like the ones I promised will be imposed if he moves, number one.
Okay, so they're not just sanctions, Rick. They're going to be super sanctions this time. Well, Russia has responded to the current sanctions, and we've really put some sanctions on, a number of different individuals in Russia. So, is sanctions the response? Is that the response we're putting out there? What's going on here, Rick? Is Joe Biden even halfway serious about responding to Russia?
Well, he is following the standard, typical Western foreign policy tactics of sanctions. We all know that sanctions are what prompted Japan to attack Pearl Harbor in 1941.
That's right.
FDR put sanctions on Japan. Japan responded by bombing Pearl Harbor. If they continue with sanctions, at some point, Russia will bomb the West. It's just they're acts of war. While we're talking about the acts of war, I want to take a pause in this discussion of the Biden press conference. And I want to show you what U.S. foreign policy looks like in terms of human lives, because in 2011, Barack Obama, remember Barack Obama, the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize? Well, he and his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, launched a war on the country of Syria. Syria had done nothing against the United States of America, but there were Zionists who wanted Syria. And the Zionists, who controlled Obama, who controlled Trump, who controlled Biden, they launched a war against Syria. And they ripped the country to pieces. Syria had not waged war against anybody. Syria had not attacked any of its neighbors. But the Zionists wanted Syria.
Yes.
And they wanted the land because it's part of greater Israel. And so the Zionists came up with a plan. That plan was they created a fake Islamic army that they called ISIS. And ISIS, we were told, were even meaner than Al-Qaeda. And we all know Al-Qaeda was bad because the CIA trained them to be really bad. But they weren't bad enough to take out Bashar Assad. No, the CIA and the Israeli Mossad had to create something even meaner than Al-Qaeda. They created ISIS. And so they assembled this ragtag army of mercenaries in the Middle East to invade Syria. Many Muslims and Christians died. Many were displaced from their homes. Church pastors were impaled on their crosses at their churches. I personally know of a small boy who was cut in half in front of his parents. I interviewed his pastor. They sawed the boy in half. The atrocities are unthinkable. And it was all at the direction of Barack Obama. But when Donald Trump came in, he kept saying he was going to end the war, but he would get pushed into bombing Syria to prove that he was a man. You know, they would call him, a name, a Russian stooge or something. Well, then, Donald Trump would have to prove he was a man, so he would bomb Syria. And then he sent U.S. forces in to seize the oil fields of Syria. And to this day, American troops are guarding Syrian oil fields, allowing the American billionaires to steal the oil and drain the wealth from the Syrian people. To this very day, it's still going on. But I saw a video today of a camp in Syria for refugees. This is from France 24. Major snowstorm hit Syria, and we're going to show you a video from France 24. I want you to see what Zionist-controlled American foreign policy looks like. America has been under the control of Zionists for decades. And we have no president capable of wresting control of foreign policy away from the Zionists. And so America is being used, American soldiers are being used to kill people on behalf of Zionism. And I want you to see what U.S. foreign policy looks like. Let's watch the video.
وقعت علينا الخيمة بالليل أنا والأولاد وكانت الصوبة علقانة علقت الخيمة ما ضل عنا لا أكل ولا شرب ولا شيء يأتي.
وأطفال ما عندها لا حدا يساعدها ولا شيء. أطفال سحبناها من جوا الخيم وقال إجا الدفاع المدني إجا هنا شوي ما قدر يفوت همين من الطريق من صعوبة الطريق ما قدر الدفاع المدني يفوت لجوا يشوف وضع العالم.
So these are former residents, likely of Aleppo, because it wasn't too far out of Aleppo.
And Aleppo was predominantly a Christian city.
That's right, Rick. So there was no reason for these people to be living in tents in the first place, because there was no reason for Aleppo to be destroyed in the first place.
They were living in homes until the United States and Israel and Saudi Arabia sent their mercenary army, ISIS, into Aleppo to destroy it. And who went to Aleppo to rescue the Christians in Aleppo? The Russian military. That's one reason they hate Putin. Putin sent the Russian military to Aleppo to stop the massacre of the Syrian Christians. Let's get real about what's going on.
You're right.
The Zionists were murdering Syrian Christians. They continue to murder Syrian Christians. It's genocide to wipe out the Christian population and then blame it on the Muslims.
Right. And so this is what American foreign policy looks like in action. And so we've seen the results in Syria. Now we're going to see the results in Ukraine here in the next few days.
More devastation, more death, more destruction.
And they'll blame it on the Russians when it's the result of American and NATO foreign policy moving forward. But if that's not enough trouble, we have our own internal problems that are going on as far as the election is concerned. The big push that Joe Biden has been going through over the past few weeks is trying to get his election reform bill passed.
Local election takeover bill.
Yes, because you name one person whose vote didn't get counted in the last election, right? Is that what they're arguing about?
Now, what they're doing, they want to federalize every election in America, down to the smallest town. They want it federalized.
Yes.
So the federal government will be in control of the way the smallest towns vote. That's what this bill's about.
And so in his press conference yesterday, right at the very end, he was asked, basically, do you think the 2022 elections are going to be legitimate? So this is the Hill here. Biden says elections might not be legitimate if his reform bills aren't passed. Okay, so he makes that, that connection there.
Wait a minute, Doc. Joe Biden is espousing conspiracy theories? Baseless, unsubstantiated conspiracy theories that the elections will not be legitimate?
If his reform bills aren't passed.
But this is a conspiracy theory, right?
That's right.
Didn't the Democrats in the news media, well, that's the same thing, accuse Donald Trump of spreading conspiracy theories and unsubstantiated claims that the 2020 election was illegitimate.
Yes, that's exactly what they were saying.
So now Joe Biden is saying, if you don't pass this bill, I don't think the November 22 elections will be legitimate.
That's what he said at the end of the press conference yesterday.
Who started all this stuff, causing the American people to doubt the legitimacy of our elections? It started with the Democrats in 2016.
Yes.
They said Russia hacked the election.
Yes.
To this day, Hillary Clinton believes she won the election. To this day. Remember a few months ago, she read her acceptance speech?
Yeah, the tears and everything.
The woman is crazy. She actually believes that she won the election in 2016.
Because they told her she was going to win that election.
Yes.
And somehow the matrix didn't work right.
And in Georgia, Stacey Abrams believes she was elected governor.
Well, it's okay to live in a fantasy world. Just stay away from people.
But the Democrats believe that the elections were rigged.
Yes.
When they lose, they say the elections were rigged.
Right. And when they win, they say we've got to pass reform so the next election isn't rigged. That's their logic, though. But Joe Biden did say this right at the very end of the press conference yesterday. Well, listen to what he had to say about this.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to clarify, a moment ago you were asked whether or not you believed that we would have free and fair elections in 2022 if some of these state legislatures reforms their voting protocols. You said that it depends. Do you think that they would in any way be illegitimate?
Oh, yeah, I think it easily can be illegitimate. Imagine if, in fact, Trump has succeeded in convincing Pence to not count the votes. Imagine if...
In regards to 2022, sir, the midterm
2022, I mean, imagine if those attempts to say that the count was not legit. You have to recount it, and we're not going to count, we're going to discard the following votes. I mean, sure, I'm not saying it's going to be legit. It's the increase in the prospect of being illegitimate is a direct proportion of us not being able to get these reforms passed. But I don't think you're not going to see me, and I don't think you're going to see the Democratic Party give up on coming back at assuming that the attempt fails today.
All right, so that started a whole new whirlpool of discussion today.
So to follow the Democratic Party propaganda deception, their bill, they call it reform. It's always reform.
Right.
Who's against reform? reform makes everything better, right?
That's right.
But what their bill really does is it federalizes all elections in the United States, and it legitimizes the crooked things they did in 2020, like mailing ballots to everybody, whether they requested a ballot or not.
Yes.
There were so many things that they did, the ballot harvesting, that they skewed the elections. People voted who were not citizens. People voted who were not registered. People voted by mail and then went to the polls and voted again.
Dead people voted.
But that's reform. That's reform to the Democrats. So the Republicans are saying, oh, wait a minute, we're not going to allow you to do in 22 what you did in 2020. We're going to tighten the election laws.
Yes.
People are going to have to show voter ID. There are things that people are going to have to do. They're going to have to request a mail-in ballot. And that is called discrimination.
Right.
Right?
That's right. That's what it is to them. So,
but the Democrats like vaccine passports. If you're in New York, you have to show that you've been vaccinated to eat a hot dog at a cafe.
But you don't have to show your ID to vote.
Right. You have to show your ID to get on a plane, unless you're an illegal immigrant.
So,
by the way, I don't know if this is how crazy it's gotten, Doc. Do you know what the Biden administration is now allowing the TSA to do with illegals? You're going to crack open. You hear this. You're going to crack up. So you and I have to show a legitimate government ID, right?
Right, in case we're carrying a bomb in our shoe or something like that, right?
But you have to show a driver's license, a passport, some legitimate.
Take a picture of your face, everything, yes.
But for illegals, they can show an arrest warrant.
An arrest warrant? Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you.
Wow.
I am not kidding you.
Yeah, I've been here before.
So the purpose of the TSA is to make sure that the passengers who are getting on the plane pose no safety risk.
So you show them an arrest warrant.
So you're an illegal immigrant, and you show them an arrest warrant, and they say, that's good enough for us, get on the plane.
That's right.
Meanwhile, a person who was born in the United States, lived here for decades, paid their taxes, good citizen, can't get on the plane because he or she forgot his wallet or purse with their driver's license.
Right.
But if you had your arrest warrant, you could get on the plane.
Wow. That's
How
just
crazy is this? This is when you let Democrats in control, it goes bizarro. Totally bizarro. It's crazy. And they just want to take us deeper and deeper into this world of craziness. So we'll get back to Mr. Biden's.
So these remarks that he made last night, Rick, caused a lot of hullabaloo today in that he wasn't supposed to say those things. And so Jen Psaki, she must have had a long night last night because she had to respond to this morning. And so this is, Jen Psaki, this from her Twitter account, said, let's be clear. So, they're always using those "let's be clear" phrases. Joe Biden says that a lot.
Like you and I are confused about what we just heard him say.
So what you heard isn't what you were supposed to hear. This is what you're supposed to hear. The president was not casting doubt on the legitimacy of the 2022 election. He was making the opposite point. In fact, in 2020, a record number of voters turned out in the face of a pandemic, and election officials made sure they could vote and have those votes counted. So we need election reform, but the 2020 election was okay, right? Is that what they're saying? We need election reform, but that last election we had, it was good
legitimate
because we won.
But we're going to change the rules for 2022.
Just in case there's any cheating going on.
But what she's saying is Joe Biden didn't question the legitimacy of the 2022 elections. Yes, we just heard him say it.
And so they had to trot Jen Psaki out, of all places, to Fox this morning, Rick. Now, that's, Jen Psaki rarely makes an appearance on Fox News.
It must really be bad.
You knew it was bad when they had to bring Jen Psaki on Fox because they knew that a whole bunch of people were watching Fox because nobody's watching CNN, nobody's watching MSNBC, but there are people actually still watching Fox. So she was on there today, and she's having to explain what President Biden said that he didn't say, but maybe he really did say. So watch this.
Well, first, I've talked to the president a lot about this, and he absolutely is not predicting that the 2022 elections would be illegitimate. The point he was raising was both that in 2020, even amongst challenging circumstances, efforts to suppress the vote, and the midst of a pandemic, there was record turnout. Democrats and Republicans, record turnout to go to the polls. And the point he was making is that the former president asked a number of states, 7 or more in fact, to overturn the outcome of the election.
Okay, so
because there were legitimate questions about what the Democrats did in the election.
We don't want you questioning that anymore.
Right.
Now, Vice President Harris, she is supposedly talking to Joe Biden every day. Maybe she didn't get the whole memo on everything that was going on regarding President Biden's comments, because she showed up on, they hauled her out on the Today Show this morning, Rick, and
to say that the elections would be legitimate.
Actually, she actually doubled down on Joe Biden's illegitimacy comments here. Watch this morning.
Is he really concerned that we may not have fair and free elections?
The president has been consistent on this issue. And the issue at hand, I was there last night in the chamber of the Senate, and the issue is that there are 2 bills, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, that have been the solution that has been offered to address the fact that around our country, states have put in place laws that are purposely making it more difficult for the American people to vote.
So she is confirming that along with Joe Biden, that if we don't pass these reform bills, there's going to be a lot of cheating next time, especially by Republicans.
But she's saying that the Republicans are trying to prevent people from voting. No, they're trying to prevent you from cheating.
Yes, that's right. So
there's nobody stopping any legitimate citizen from voting. But you're not going to vote twice.
Right. And you should be a citizen. I mean,
like in New York City, you don't have to be a citizen now to vote in New York City.
That's right. So, well, earlier in the press conference, he was asked a question about the 2022 elections. Now, I'm going to, set this up because it is kind of painful to watch this. And I don't take any joy in showing this to you today, because we should be very, very concerned about the man that's sitting in the Oval Office, if he is sitting in the Oval Office, because every time we see him, he's at somewhere else. And so we should be really concerned about President Biden. And after you watch this clip, the question and answer, you're going to be asking yourself some very serious questions about the future of the presidency and the future of our nation. So we're going to show you the whole 2-minute clip here. And like I said, it's tough to get through, but watch.
Well, that could school reopenings or closures become a potent midterm issue for Republicans to win back the suburbs?
Oh, I think it could be, but I hope in God that look, maybe I'm kidding myself, but as time goes on, the voter who is just trying to figure out, as I said, how to take care of their family, put 3 squares on the table, stay safe, be able to pay their mortgage or their rent, etc., is becoming much more informed on the motives of some of the political players and some of the political parties. And I think that they are not going to be as susceptible to believing some of the outlandish things that have been said and continue to be said. You know, every president, not necessarily in the first 12 months, but every president the first couple of years, every president, of the last presidents, at least 4 of them, have had polling numbers that are 44% favorable. So it's this idea that, but you all, not you all, but now it is, well, Biden's at, one poll showed him at 33%. The average is 44, 45%. One poll him at 49%. I mean, the idea that the American public are trying to sift their way through what's real and what's fake. And I don't think I've never seen a time when the political coverage.
I had to stop it there. It went on for another full minute.
My.
That was
That's
just
sad.
2 minutes of it.
Was that near the end of the press conference?
That was somewhere in the middle. And
So he was wearing out around the 1 hour mark.
So it's that, like I said, I don't take any joy in that, and we're not making fun of the president or anything like that at all.
Doc,
this is very serious.
Well, I don't know what he was saying.
Well, he was asked a question.
I know
about,
what the question was. I don't know what his answer was.
That's just it. There was no answer. It was kind of everywhere. So, maybe you've had a loved one, a relative of some kind, and they've gotten up in years, and there comes a point in time where you're sitting around, you're talking to them and everything, and all of a sudden there's a light that goes on that says, maybe grandma or grandpa, isn't doing so well anymore. I don't know if you've ever had to experience that before
I have.
or not.
Yes.
After watching this, Rick, I mean, come on.
My granddad had an accident. He was still driving his car and, up until, I guess, his late 80s. And one Sunday morning going to church, he pulled out of his driveway and didn't see a car coming and got hit, got broadsided. He got hospitalized, but after that, Doc, he was never the same. The doctors told us that the trauma did something to him. It wasn't the physical injuries. He got over that. The doctor said, Granddad's a strong man at his age. He's going to recover quickly from the physical injuries.
Right.
But his mind, they said that the trauma of the accident triggered something in his mind. And we saw that decline. He never drove a car again. He didn't want to drive. He was afraid to drive. But he started drifting away. And I think a lot of us have experienced that with loved ones. And Joe Biden's in that state. He has declined dramatically since January.
Yes.
Of last year. In 1 year.
Dramatically.
Is a dramatic deterioration in his mental faculties. Now, so at some point, what will the Democrats, the handlers that are running the Biden White House, when will they decide he's got to go? Are they going to wait until the 22 elections? Because right now the Democrats are going into an absolute debacle.
Oh, yes.
They can't cheat enough to win the 22 elections. They're going to lose. And again, I would encourage you, if you've ever thought about running for office,
run.
This is the year to run. 2022, run as a Republican, and particularly school board. If there are school board seats open in your community and you are qualified to be a member of the school board, then run for the school board. And if you're qualified to be on the county commission or the county council or the city council or whatever, run for one of those offices.
Because you're going to win this year.
This year, you're going to win as a Republican. Republicans are going to be swept in by a tsunami in November. So definitely run. So are the handlers who are running the Biden White House, are they going to allow Joe Biden to stay there until November? I think yes. They can't get rid of Nancy Pelosi, and she's not too
chipper either,
together either, when she's sober. But they're gonna dump her after November.
Right.
She's done.
Right. She's already getting retirement homes lined up.
She's done. Nancy Pelosi will not be the Speaker of the House next year, even if the Democrats retain control of the House. She will not be the Speaker. Will they get rid of Joe Biden now, before November, or after November? I would say after November. They'll let the debacle happen, but then they bring in Kamala Harris, who's going to now take them into a debacle in 2024.
Yes.
Now, Dick Morris, who worked for the Clintons years ago, was a political strategist for the Clintons. He said last week that there's only one couple in America who could think at this level of strategy, and it's Bill and Hillary.
Bill and Hillary.
Yes.
So where are you going with this?
Dick Morris believes that Bill and Hillary Clinton, with their influence on the Democratic Party, orchestrated the nomination of Joe Biden and the selection of Kamala Harris.
Okay.
Because the Biden-Harris administration would be so bad, so incompetent, that the Democrats will have a colossal defeat in 2022.
Right.
And then in 2023,
they'll be looking for a savior.
They're looking for a savior, and who is the person who can save the Democratic Party? None other than Hillary.
Right.
And they'll cry out for Hillary to come back and lead the party in 2024. Dick Morris believes that's really what's going on behind the scenes.
Wow, that is diabolical.
It is.
But believable, isn't it?
It's believable, because why did the Democrats nominate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? He's a horrible pick. Yeah. And they're stuck with them right now.
And Mr. Biden lost to Mr. Trump. This man that we just watched lost to Mr. Trump while living in a basement for 6 months.
But they put him in the White House anyhow. Right. And now they're stuck. They got to prop him up. Where are all the Biden supporters? Where are they? Could Mr. Biden have a rally? Could he go out?
He had rallies in basements. I mean,
yes, but could Joe Biden go somewhere right now and get 50,000 people to come out and cheer for him?
I seriously doubt that. But isn't that?
Who supports him? Even the people who claim that they voted for him won't claim it now. Where are all the Joe Biden bumper stickers? Because they usually stay on cars for years.
And it's
the Trump people still have their Trump stickers from 2016.
And it's not only the middle of the road Democrats or centrist Democrats that still exist out there. It's the progressives that are banning him too. Remember when Joe Biden went to Georgia here a couple weeks ago, and Stacey Abrams wouldn't even show up with him.
That's right.
And they said it was a scheduling conflict. Okay, Georgia's a good-sized state, but it's big enough where you can drive in a couple hours.
But you're scheduled the president of the United States. No, she doesn't want to be seen.
No, that was a message that that what they call progressives, but of the party have abandoned Mr. Biden. We started off the program today, Rick, talking about a potential conflict with Russia, and we just saw Mr. Biden stumble through 2 minutes, and it was actually more like 3.5 minutes, of an explanation of a question he didn't even answer. If I put Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin in a room, who am I betting on that's going to be coherent? It's going to be Vladimir Putin. And he's going to know what he's doing in that room.
And you can be certain that in the Kremlin, the war planners in the Kremlin are watching that Biden press conference and going, unbelievable. If Russia attacked NATO forces in the next 30 days in Ukraine, there's no competent person in the Oval Office to respond. The cabinet would have to remove Joe Biden and install Kamala Harris. Don't roll it out. Remember, Donald Trump, he accurately said, Nancy Pelosi's 25th Amendment Committee is for Joe Biden, not me. And he was right about this. They will remove, if there is a foreign policy crisis, such as a confrontation with Russia, they won't be able to wait until November 22.
Right.
They'll be forced to remove Joe Biden because the whole world will see that a senile man is in the Oval Office who doesn't know what he's doing.
Rick, why do you think they trotted him out here yesterday for 2 hours? Why did they do that?
Well, he disappeared last week for a long, long time because they were prepping him. They had to cancel all of his appointments. They had to have him focused on delivering these statements, but he couldn't do it. I mean, even after all the prep time they gave him, he still couldn't keep his act together. They were trying to prove to the world that Joe Biden is in full control of his mental faculties, but it backfired.
In a big, big way.
Really backfired.
Both in foreign and domestic policy. What else is there?
So if there's no crisis, no war, nothing of that magnitude, Joe Biden will ride out 2022, and they'll get rid of him after the election. If there is a major crisis like war with Russia, they'll remove him in the middle of the night. And then you got Kamala Harris, who is the most incompetent vice president in the history of the nation.
Who has a lower approval rating than Joe Biden does. Joe Biden's in the lower 30s. Kamala Harris, she's in the upper 20s as far as approval is concerned. And that's how bad things are. Well, we have other news we want to get to today. Rick, you came across an interesting story about something going on down in Texas with a sitting congressman. What's the story that's going on?
The FBI raided the home and the campaign office of a Democrat congressman down in Laredo. No explanation why the raid took place. The congressman said he's cooperating. But it was unusual. I mean,
yeah, especially to see a Democrat.
Yes, a Democrat member of the House, and but this particular Democrat has been critical of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in their incompetence to protect the southern border.
Right. So, well, the FBI conducted what it described as a court-authorized law enforcement activity. I don't know of any other kind. At the Laredo home of U.S. Rep. Henry Queller on Wednesday. Agents were also present at his downtown campaign office in Laredo, and although FBI spokesperson Roseanne Hughes did not identify what the agency is investigating, she did issue a statement acknowledging the activity, asking for a statement about the FBI's presence at the congressman's home. Hughes confirmed law enforcement activity in the area. The FBI was present in the vicinity of Windridge Drive and Estate Drive in Laredo, conducting court-authorized law enforcement activity. The FBI cannot provide further comment on an ongoing investigation.
Maybe they had his house confused with Hunter Biden's house. Well, they thought that they were raiding Hunter Biden's house.
Well, we know that's not going to happen because to this day they haven't done anything with Hunter Biden. But Rick did point out something interesting. Because it's rare that you see stories about Democrats getting investigated by the FBI, no matter what administration it is. But he came across a story here. This was from right before Christmas. This is on Fox. So this is Henry Queller. House Democrat slams Kamala Harris on the border. Doesn't look like she's very interested in this topic. And now,
did they get even?
Well, that's the question. A quote from this particular article here says, Congressman, he's a moderate whose district covers nearly 200 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border, told the New York Times he had been disappointed by his interactions with Harris. And the story is that Harris had made repeated attempts to have a conversation with Kamala Harris, the vice president, regarding the border issue, had left numerous messages, sent many emails regarding the issue with no response. Now, of course, the story is from the Biden administration that Vice President Harris, she's in charge of the border issue, right? So you have a member of Congress.
Who is also a ranking Democrat on a subcommittee with jurisdiction on border security.
Right. And so you would think that he would have at least some influence or some say. And yet, this story happens. An investigation. What kind of investigation? Are we looking for, missing files, secret tapes?
We're just looking.
We're just looking. And it says that they were hauling out boxes of materials from both the congressman's home and from his office in the middle of the night. And so it's a mysterious story, one that we're going to keep an eye on. But one thing you have to remember, Democrats don't get arrested and they don't get investigated. And so they get
unless
they have betrayed another Democrat.
Yes.
And so that goes for Cuomo, that goes for just go down through history. If you betray a ranking Democrat, they come and get you one way or the other. So,
I was talking about coming and get you. This next one is ABC television. The Supreme Court paves way for Trump White House document review by the January 6th committee. So the January 6th committee is this kangaroo court appointed by Nancy Pelosi to investigate the so-called insurrection on January 6th.
Right, so the Supreme Court on Wednesday denied former President Donald Trump's request for a stay of a lower court mandate that hundreds of pages of his presidential records from January 6th be turned over to the Congressional Committee investigating the attack on the Capitol. The vote was 8-1. Justice Clarence Thomas would have granted the application. Among the records being sought by the committee were White House notes and call and visitor logs from on and around January 6th. Rick, any message that we should receive on that regarding the vote being 8-1 from the court on this?
Well, it means several justices appointed by Donald Trump voted with the Democrats against Donald Trump's personal interest in this. What is taking place with this investigation? There's one reason for this investigation. They want to get some type of conviction. They want a legal conviction, whether it's from a court or from the House of Representatives. They want to slap the label insurrectionist on Donald Trump.
Right.
They will then use a post-Civil War constitutional amendment that was added to the U.S. Constitution to block Confederates from holding public office or obtaining federal jobs. They will use that amendment to the Constitution to prevent Donald Trump from running for president in 2024. That's what this is all about. And anybody who gets caught up in the net, and there's no limit of how far down they'll go. The people that they've had arrested, the people that they're investigating, they get convictions on all of them, and they slap insurrectionists on them. None of those people will be allowed to run for public office or get a federal job.
Right. Now, mind you, there's only been, it wasn't until late last week, early this week, that anyone has even been, touched by any kind of charges related to insurrection.
Right. Now, I'll tell you a story. This has nothing to do with today's politics, but it has to do with the rapture.
Okay. Well, that's a topic I like to talk about.
And so this has to do with Cyrus Scofield, the infamous the writer of the Scofield Reference Bible, which was basically John Darby's notes were put into the footnotes of the Bible.
Well, Darby was dead already, so
yeah, he was dead. So Scofield appropriated Darby's ideas and put them as footnotes in the Bible. And but here's a little tidbit of information about Cyrus Scofield. The guy Scofield was a con man. Okay, he went to jail for conning people out of money.
That's true.
Okay. He was a professional con man. He could get money out of people. People trusted him. He'd get the money out of them. He misused the money, and so he finally got thrown in jail. But he got appointed as a U.S. District Attorney.
Yes.
In, was it Kansas?
Kansas.
Kansas.
Yes.
In Kansas, by a U.S. Senator. Got him appointed, got that appointment, okay? Schofield wasn't a lawyer.
That's true. He was not.
He was not a lawyer.
He was practicing law, but he was not
a lawyer.
He was not a lawyer.
Because he was a crook. This is the Schofield Reference Bible. This is the man, that Christian Zionists revere, okay? So he wasn't a lawyer. He lied. Well, he didn't lie. He just
didn't tell the truth.
He just didn't tell the truth, But he became U.S. District Attorney for Kansas, and he was forced to resign. And he was forced to resign because there were a lot of charges, accusations. I'll put it like this: accusations. I don't know if they ever brought charges against him, but there were accusations, bribery, and basic stuff like that.
Right.
But one of the things he did, Doc, is he swore an oath that he did not take part in insurrection against the United States.
Now, why is that significant, Rick?
Because Sire Schofield was a Confederate soldier.
That's right.
He did take part in insurrection. In terms of the legal definition at the time, it was insurrection against the United States. And so back then they were prohibiting Confederates from being elected.
Right.
Who were the Confederates? Democrats. Who were blocking the Confederates? Republicans, the new Republican Party. And so Schofield swore a federal oath that he had never participated in insurrection.
Even though he'd served as a Confederate soldier.
Yes.
That's interesting.
That's one of the reasons he had to resign.
And he had to leave the state of Kansas after that.
That's right.
And never come back.
And what did he become? He reinvented himself and became a prophecy teacher.
Yes.
And the rest is history. But I bring that up because of insurrection. So what the Democrats are doing with Donald Trump is that they want to get a conviction that Donald Trump participated in insurrection against the United States of America.
So the way to do that is all they have to do is have him connected with one person, just one person that participated in any kind of insurrection.
Yes.
And so, right, as I said earlier, this is it's only been this week that you've actually had people with charges of insurrection conspiracy, not even insurrection, just insurrection conspiracy.
Well,
they're trying to make that connection to Donald Trump.
So there's another investigation going on in the state of New York. The state's attorney general is Letitia James is looking into the Trump organization's real estate dealings, and they are accusing him of manipulating the value of real estate in order to obtain bank loans, and then another devaluation of the real estate to avoid taxes. And so I've got a story here from the Washington Post. New York Attorney General alleges that President Trump's business inflated property value wealth statements.
Right. So New York Attorney General Letitia James alleged on Tuesday that former President Trump's business inflated the value of his properties and misstated his personal worth in representations to lenders, insurance brokers, and other players in his real estate empire. So James, a Democrat who is leading a civil probe into Trump and his business, spelled out the claims in a late court filing on Tuesday, offered in support of her bid to see Trump and his adult children deposed under the oath. And this 160-page filing, James cited multiple examples of Trump allegedly lending his signature to financial statements that estimated the worth of properties in the Trump Organization portfolio and the value of his own fortune, estimates that James's team has long suggested were misleading and potentially key to taking legal action against the Manhattan-based company. And so, Rick, just to help me through this, so let's say that he had a building that he estimated the value at $25 million. Okay, so he'd be able to borrow against that building based on that value.
Yes. So he'd convince the bank the building was worth $25 million.
Right.
Get the loan. And then immediately go to work bringing down the value of the building to lower his taxes.
Right. Okay, so now I got a handle on that now.
So
why would that shouldn't surprise us about Donald Trump, should it?
No, but it's illegal if he did it because he committed bank fraud. Whenever you get a loan at a bank, you sign a document that says you swear that all the facts, all the figures, all the statements on that application are true.
Even if someone else did the work.
Yes, you swear you're signing that everything on that bank application is true, and it says it's a federal crime to lie to the bank. So if they did inflate the numbers, if she can prove it, or they may get a conviction on him. Now, another one that's under another Trump real estate deal that's underway, investigation. This is the Daily Mail. Trump Organization valued New York City apartment at $25 million despite giving president's daughter an option to buy it for $8 million.
Okay.
So here you go again. One hand, Donald Trump is saying this building is $25 million. Privately, he's selling it to his daughter for $8 million. So did she get the spread between $25 million and $8 million in terms of tax-free benefits?
All right, so now I understand that. So Miss Ivanka Yael Kushner had the option to buy the Park Avenue apartment in New York at the much lower price than it was valued at. Letitia James argues that the president's daughter should be compelled to testify, and she is going to testify, by the way. Her brother Eric Trump invoked the Fifth Amendment 500 times over 6 hours of testimony. Ms. James, the New York Attorney General, Tuesday announced she was seeking a court order to force the Trumps to testify. She's been investigating the Trump Organization for tax fraud for more than 2 years now. President Trump's called that a witch hunt. Ms. James said on Tuesday that her team had made significant progress and needed to talk to the former president, Don Jr., and Ivanka, having already spoken to Eric. And they said, we have uncovered significant evidence that the firm used fraudulent and misleading asset valuations on multiple properties to obtain economic benefits. She gave a detailed account of their findings, as we mentioned, 160 pages. He claimed his Westchester property was worth $291 million, yet a valuer in 2016 said it was only worth $56 million, so an example there. Trump is also accused of inflating the financial records of his golf clubs, such as claiming that members were paying $150,000 for membership. There's a lot of accusations here, Rick. We do know that Mr. Trump, he's the master of the art of the deal, right?
Yes.
Had a couple books about the deal and making the deals.
But your deals have to be legit. They have to be legal. Okay.
So
if you're going to make a deal, make sure the deal is legal.
So I can't sell something to a family member at a lower price than the market value?
It depends on what the details of that deal is.
And it depends if I've got other notes or liens attached to that.
Right.
So,
right. If he owned it free and clear, there's no debt on it. If he wants to sell it to a family member cheaper, there's nothing wrong with that. The IRS might say, wait a minute, Ivanka just got, $15 million in revenue, in wealth. I mean, they could look at it that way, that you transferred wealth to your daughter. I don't like the IRS. I don't like the income tax system. I'm just saying it's there. That's what you have to deal with. Mr. Trump, they're after him. That's the bottom line. The Democrats have not stopped. They are not going to let him have a free ride in 2024. I personally do not believe Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee in 2024. I think they're either going to get a conviction on him or his health is going to change. Look, he's almost as old as Joe Biden. He's triple jabbed.
And Regeneron.
And Regeneron, okay? I just don't think Donald Trump's going to be the nominee in 2024. I think it's going to be somebody else, but
to hedge their bets, they've got to handicap him and the family.
You better believe it. And this next one from the Hill, Democrats see good chance that Attorney General Garland will prosecute Trump.
Now this is yes.
Now this is where they're going in for the kill. This is to get the insurrectionist conviction on Donald Trump. Ban him forever from holding public office. And they may be able to get convictions on other people around Trump.
Or at least maybe get them to flip or turn or something around there. So,
well, they want to get convictions as many as they can because it prohibits them from holding office, even getting a job. This quote from the Hill.
So Senate Democrats believe there's a good chance that the Department of Justice will prosecute former President Trump for trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election and inciting the January 6th attack on the Capitol, which would have major political reverberations ahead of the 2024 election. Democratic lawmakers say they don't have any inside information on what might happen. Sure they don't. And describe Attorney General Merrick Garland as someone who would make sure to run any investigation strictly by the book. Well, it depends on who's writing the book, though, doesn't it? And so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But the fact of the matter is they still see Donald Trump as a threat.
Yes.
Moving forward. They know that they can't stack Joe Biden up against Donald Trump again. They know they can't do that. Even a Donald Trump who, in a weakened state, could still go head-to-head with Joe Biden and easily win if the contest were today. So they've got to handicap not only Donald Trump, but his entire family.
That's right. Now, the next story is from New York Post. Congressman James Comer wants information on Hunter Biden's ties to a Chinese mine sale. Well, good luck, Congressman, because Attorney General Garland has no time to investigate Hunter Biden's connections to the Chinese communists. He's trying to take down Donald Trump.
Right.
So Joe Biden's son is not going to be investigated for anything. No. For all we know, he's still making deals with the Chinese communists. One last story. This also from the New York Post. New York Senator and Democratic Majority Leader Charles Schumer. Two of his daughters work for Silicon Valley tech companies. One works for Amazon and the other one works for Facebook. Well, isn't that sweet? Isn't that just lovely that Chucky Schumer's daughters are working for the companies that are deplatforming and censoring conservatives?
Right, and currently right now, working through the Senate is an antitrust bill meant to rein in the power of the big tech companies and everything. What do you think is likely to happen there? Well, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, he's responsible for shepherding these antitrust bills that aim to crack down on big tech. And both his children are on the payroll of companies the proposals would seek to rein in. Jessica Schumer is a registered lobbyist at Amazon, according to New York State records.
Does she have access to her father as a lobbyist?
Sure. Allison Schumer works at Facebook as a product marketing manager. Advocates of the legislation fear that the tech company's ties to Senator Schumer's children could create a conflict of interest, Rick. People close to the matter are told that on the money. And they say Schumer's familiar connection to the tech companies is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the cozy relationship some members of Congress have with the firms. If you think there's going to be a crackdown on big tech, keep on thinking.
Hey, and it's not just Mr. Schumer's daughters that are working for big tech, but Jessica Schumer's husband,
yes,
Michael Shapiro, worked at Google.
Yes.
From 2017 to 2019.
But now he's got a cushy job at the Department of Transportation under Pete Buttigieg, who I don't know what the Department of Transportation does because they don't deal with airports or transportation. They just deal with nursing kids for gay couples. And so
Right.
he also didn't respond to a request for comment. And so,
Hey, should we do, I'm going to do one more, 39. This is a mobile ID world. The Internal Revenue Service makes ID.me mandatory for people like you and me who want to access your online accounts at the IRS.
now, Rick, I don't know if you've been on the IRS website over the past few months, but they started rolling this out actually a few months ago.
I didn't know about that.
Making it optional. It was an optional thing, but now it's going to become a mandatory option. Well, it's not an option if it's mandatory. So the IRS is making ID.me its official identity provider. So the agency first started trialing ID.me's platform back in 2017, initially using technology to administer its child tax credits programs. The service has since expanded to encompass other digital services and will soon be mandatory for any taxpayers who want to access IRS services online. Now, as it stands, anyone who tries to create a new online account with the IRS will now be forced to create an ID.me account in order to do so. Those who open an IRS account before the requirement was put in place will not need to make one immediately, but will be expected to have one by summer of this year. The IRS is yet to provide a firm date for the transition. And so I noticed this a couple months ago, about August or September, had some IRS issues to look at, and they were requiring, do you want to sign up for ID.me? And of course, no, I don't want to sign up for ID.me, because you knew where that was taking you to. But how many millions of people signed up for ID.me last year as those checks were going out? You know, people said, well, I wonder when my check's coming in. Well, I'll go on the IRS website. And millions of people did sign up.
So you will have to provide the IRS with a digital selfie of your face.
Right. So
plus a government-issued ID card. Well, how dare the IRS demand identification?
Well, they demand identification for you to pay your taxes, Rick.
But not to vote.
Not to vote. And if you understand that about the government, you don't need to know anything else at all. You got to show your ID to pay your taxes, but not to vote.
So if you proposed using, what is this site called?
ID.me.
ID.me.
Mm-hmm.
If the Republicans said, we're going to adopt ID.me in all elections, would the Democrats go berserk?
Oh. They might have, their brains might explode, because they would be the ones who'd want the ID.me established, but they would also want anyone possible to vote. They want as many people paying taxes as possible, but also as many people voting
you know what? The late Senator Bob Dole, whom I met one time, personally meet him and shake his hand at a fundraiser when I was running for the House of Delegates in the state of Maryland. But Senator Dole, his letter that he left behind, that he supposedly wrote on his deathbed,
right,
which showed the wit of Bob Dole, even as he was declining in health. He said soon he was going to find out two things: whether heaven looked like Kansas,
right,
and whether he could vote
in Chicago. Yes. And even the Democrats laughed at that one.
That's right.
So.
Okay, we're going to let that be the final word today. Thank you for watching True News. Please share this program with your friends and tell them about this alternative newscast. It's been around for over 20-some years, and God willing, we're going to continue going many more years and keep telling people that Jesus Christ is Lord, that He's coming back soon. That's our mission. That is the purpose of this ministry, to tell people that Jesus Christ is coming back. So thank you. We appreciate your time with us today. We'll be back here tomorrow.
God bless you.